Chapter 1. In the late 1980s, Lechsinska's parents left Poland and came to England looking for a new beginning, their hearts heavy with hope and the weight of leaving their homeland behind. Her father, Vlad, was a hard-working man, his calloused hands and weathered brow speaking of tireless days. He was a little rough around the edges, his blunt manner softened by an honesty and big heart that earned quiet respect from those around him. At the weekend, he savoured a few beers, the froth clinging to his moustache as he shared stories in the warm glow of the pub, and indulged in a small flutter here and there, his eyes alight with the thrill of a modest bet. Her mother, Ewa, spoke with a thick Polish accent, its cadence unchanged even after 30 years in England. She worked as a cleaner in the towering glass buildings of the City of London. Her hands reddened from scrubbing to earn a bit of extra money, though her true devotion was at home, where the aroma of her cooking filled the air, nurturing her family with love. Lechsinska was a slim girl, with long flowing dark hair that cascaded like a midnight river down her back. She stood at 5 feet 7 inches in her heels, her posture graceful, and always wore a smile that warmed every room like a soft sunrise. She was very popular, her happy-go-lucky attitude toward life a magnet that drew friends close, their laughter echoing her infectious joy. Life was good for Lechsinska. She worked at the bank, where the clatter of keyboards and the hum of conversation surrounded her, earning a good wage that afforded small comforts. With her husband of 2 months, Simon, she lived in a small flat in Chelsea, its cozy walls holding their shared dreams. Who would have thought that within a few short weeks her perfect life would be in complete and utter turmoil, unraveling like a tapestry pulled by an unseen thread? "Don't forget to pick up the wine for dinner tonight," Simon shouted as Lechsinska left for work, his voice carrying a playful urgency through their flat. "I won't," she replied, shutting the door behind her with a soft click. She checked her bag for her purse, train ticket and keys, her fingers brushing each item as she hurried down the steps into the bustling Chelsea street, alive with the pulse of morning. She looked up and saw her elderly neighbour, Mrs. Ledbetter, standing in her doorway, her face creased with a large grin that reached right across her face, as if she held a secret only the morning knew. "Late again, my love," she said, her voice warm with gentle teasing. "I'm afraid so, Mrs. Ledbetter," Lechsinska smiled, her steps quickening as she moved past, her heels clicking with purpose, though she took care not to break into a run. She had been friends with Mrs. Ledbetter for a few months, their bond forged over cups of steaming coffee and long chats in the older woman's cozy parlour, yet Lechsinska still didn't know her first name, and after so long was afraid to ask, the question lingering like an unplucked string. She arrived at the bank slightly hot and flustered, her cheeks flushed from the rush. Rushing in and sitting at her desk, she blew out a lungful of air, the cool office breeze soothing her nerves. "Just made it again," said Jenny, who sat at the desk behind Lechsinska, her voice laced with playful mischief, her eyes glinting with amusement. "Now let me guess, your alarm didn't go off." "No, wait, the bus was late," Jenny added, leaning forward, eager for a reply. Lechsinska laughed, the sound bright and unburdened. "Very funny. If you must know, my husband made me late. He still can't keep his hands off me." The girls laughed out loud, their giggles a familiar melody in the hum of the bank. They had been friends for many years, starting work on the same day, their desks side by side, their bond sealed in shared glances and whispered confidences. Jenny was the type of girl who would try anything once, her spirit a wildfire chasing thrills. If there was a thrill to be had, Jenny would be first in line, her stories of daring escapades, skydiving over rolling hills or dancing until dawn in hidden clubs, painting vivid pictures that left Lechsinska wide-eyed. They would relive the moments as Jenny recounted her latest exploits, their laughter so fierce that tears of joy rolled down their cheeks, glistening in the office light. Lechsinska and Jenny were opposites. Maybe that is why they were so close, each getting to see a different side of life from their own. Jenny's wild weekends and carefree lifestyle, filled with impulsive adventures, contrasted with Lechsinska's solid foundations and simple but careful life, her choices measured and deliberate. Each, in quiet moments, was a little envious of the other. Jenny of Lechsinska's stability, Lechsinska of Jenny's untamed freedom. All through the day, Lechsinska thought about the dinner party she and Simon were hosting that night, her mind swirling with details, table settings, menus, the hope that all would go well. She wanted it to go well, to be a perfect evening. Jenny was coming, of course, her presence a comforting constant. Simon had invited a friend they thought would get along with Jenny and, to some extent, keep her occupied. His name a whisper of possibility. The two other guests were clients of Simon's, Solomon and Letitia, dealers in rare religious artifacts, their world of mystery making Lechsinska's stomach flutter with nervous anticipation. After leaving work an hour early, Lechsinska rushed around Chelsea's vibrant streets, her arms soon laden with fresh vegetables, their colors bright and crisp. A chocolate cake she had ordered from the baker's, its rich scent tempting her, and of course, don't forget the wine. Simon's words constantly running through her head like a persistent melody. Rushing up the steps to her flat, arms full of shopping and keys clenched firmly between her teeth, she tripped on the last step and hit the floor with a thump, the groceries spilling across the landing like scattered treasures. "Damn it," she muttered, just loud enough that only she would hear, her voice muffled by frustration. Lechsinska sat back on the top step, took a deep breath, and told herself to calm down, her chest rising and falling as she steadied her racing heart. She felt a burning sensation on her knee, a sharp sting that drew her gaze. A large graze covered her left knee, raw and angry. She looked to the heavens and shook her fist. A silent protest against the day's mounting mishaps. The dress she was going to wear was cut above the knee. Now she would have to choose another, and for a young lady, that's not a simple task. Each option weighed with care and indecision. "Are you okay?" a deep voice rumbled from below. "What?" Lechsinska replied sharply, startled by the intrusion. "I said, are you okay?" Standing at the foot of her steps was a very large man, his long black coat swaying slightly, a wide-brimmed hat partially covering his face, casting shadows over his pale complexion. His cheeks were slightly drawn in, his skin had the appearance of leather, weathered and tough, and he grinned, exposing crooked teeth that gleamed unnaturally. A chill ran down Lechsinska's spine, her pulse quickening with unease. Quickly she gathered the groceries that had spilled from her bag, her hands trembling slightly. "I'm fine, thank you," she said, her voice tight as she turned back to look at the stranger. But he was gone, vanished into the evening air as if he had never been there. Lechsinska ran to the foot of the steps where he had stood, her eyes scanning up and down the street, but he was nowhere to be seen, as if the city had swallowed him whole. Even though Lechsinska found this a little strange, she thought nothing more of it, her mind returning to the evening's demands. Bursting into her kitchen, she dumped the groceries on the side, their weight a relief off her arms, and picked up the phone. "Hello, Jenny, you have to come round early. I need to pick out a new dress and get dinner ready," she pleaded, her voice edged with urgency. "Calm down, this is so unlike you," Jenny replied, her tone steady and soothing. "I know, it's just that it means so much to Simon, and everything is going wrong." Okay, I will be there. Just take a deep breath." "Thanks, Jenny. You are an angel." "Oh, I doubt that," Jenny laughed, her voice a balm to Lechsinska's frayed nerves. "See you in an hour." By the time Simon arrived home, Lechsinska had everything under control. Dinner was almost ready, the kitchen filled with the warm aroma of roasting meat and simmering sauces. She had chosen a new dress to wear, its fabric hugging her frame with quiet elegance, and after a small glass of wine, she was feeling much better, the tension easing from her shoulders. "Hello, my precious," Simon whispered in her ear as he folded his arms around her, his warmth a comfort against the day's chaos. Lechsinska tilted her head back as he kissed her neck, his lips soft and familiar. "Jenny's here," she said, a playful warning in her tone. "Already?" "I thought we had time to fool around for a bit," he teased, his hand sliding up the inside of her thigh, igniting a spark of warmth. "Pack it in. Jenny's in the next room, and you have to get ready." Simon laughed and slapped Lechsinska's bottom, the sound a playful echo. "Okay, but later," he said. Okay, later. Just go and get ready." Lechsinska had fallen in love with Simon the very first time she saw him at a crowded party, the air thick with laughter and clinking glasses. As she walked into the party, there was a large group off to her right, laughing far too loudly for that type of party, their voices a boisterous chorus. As Lechsinska walked past, her eyes were firmly fixed on the center of the group, drawn to a magnetic presence. Just as she was about to turn away, two heads parted, and she locked eyes with Simon, his face alight with charm. His smile dropped from his face and shattered at his feet, as if struck by the same electric charge that coursed through her. Lechsinska had to turn away. She felt it too, a charge of energy circulating right through her body, every hair on her head standing to attention. Quickly she grabbed Jenny's arm, her friend who had brought her to the party because, as Jenny said, you will never meet Prince Charming sitting on your backside at home. Who is that? Lechsinska asked, her voice a breathless whisper. Who is who? Jenny replied, looking back over her shoulder, scanning the room with curiosity. Don't look now. Lechsinska pulled Jenny in close so she could whisper in her ear, her heart pounding. How can I see who it is if you won't let me look? Jenny replied, still trying to glance over her shoulder. Lechsinska pulled Jenny's arm even harder. Don't look. He will see you. Let go of my arm. I won't look, I promise. Jenny freed her arm from Lechsinska's vice-like grip. I'll get us a drink. You wait here. As Jenny made her way to the bar, Lechsinska dared to look back across the room. The large group had spread out, as if they had never known each other, their laughter fading. There was no sign of the handsome man who had been the center of attention. Lechsinska leaned to one side and stretched out her neck to get a better look around a large pillar that was blocking her view. Hello, Lechsinska. She froze, even though she had never heard his voice before. Lechsinska knew it was him, his tone smooth and assured. From somewhere she found the courage to move and turn to face him. I have brought you a glass of champagne, he said, his eyes holding hers with quiet intensity. Lechsinska studied him, starting at his feet, her gaze rising until their eyes met. She couldn't hold his gaze and quickly looked away, her cheeks warming. That's okay. My friend is at the bar getting me a drink. Her words struggled to pass her lips as her mouth dried and her tongue swelled, leaving them to bounce around inside, searching frantically for the nearest exit. Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. I said, Lechsinska took a deep breath, then continued, I said my friend is at the bar getting me a drink, thank you. The temperature was rising in Lechsinska's body. She wanted to run, but she couldn't move. 1,000 thoughts raced around inside her head with no beginning and no end. Her hand trembled. Lechsinska, meet Simon. Jenny returned from the bar, her voice bright with mischief. Simon asked me who you were, so I told him your name and asked him to bring your drink over for you. Isn't he gorgeous? Jenny, Lechsinska snapped as her face glowing red with embarrassment. Hello, Lechsinska, Simon said with a smile, his eyes warm and inviting. Hello, Simon. Lechsinska was still smiling when Jenny entered the kitchen, catching the flush on her friend's face. Oh yes, and what have you been up to? Jenny asked, her tone teasing. Nothing, replied Lechsinska, trying to hide her blushing face. So, who is this friend of Simon's you're trying to fix me up with? We are not trying to fix you up. We just thought you would get along with him, that's all. That's all. I will never settle down. There's far too much fun to have out there in the big wide world. He has just come back to London, and we just thought you would get along, honest. Okay then, Jenny hugged Lechsinska as she was stirring the gravy, the kitchen warm with the scent of dinner, and whispered in her ear, You know I love you, right? I know. Suddenly, Lechsinska felt a sharp pain. Jenny had bitten the top of her ear, a playful nip that startled her. Lechsinska covered it with her hand as Jenny left the kitchen in a fit of laughter. That hurt, Lechsinska yelled after her. That bloody hurt. The doorbell rang and Jenny rushed to answer it. You must be Richard, Simon's friend. I am, and who are you? I am Jenny, Lechsinska's friend, she said. Jenny blocked the entrance to the flat, and they stood in silence for what seemed like an age, just grinning at each other, the air charged with curiosity. Are you going to invite me in then? Richard asked, his voice light but expectant. Sure, come in. Jenny looked him up and down as he squeezed through the small gap she made available for him to get through. Richard was average height for a man, but very broad across the shoulders, stocky, you would say, his presence solid and grounded. He had thick brown hair, soft brown eyes that held a gentle warmth, and a small scar above his top lip, which by no means distracted from his warm, cheeky smile. Nice, Jenny thought, her lips curving slightly. Richard, my friend, how good to see you. Simon came striding across the room with his hand stretched out in front of him, his enthusiasm infectious. Richard brushed it away and gave him a bear hug, which caused Simon to let out a slight moan. Okay, I can't breathe. Okay, enough, he said. Richard released him and glanced around the room, taking in the cozy elegance of the flat. So where is your beautiful wife you were telling me about? At that moment, Lechsinska entered the living room, her new dress catching the light. Richard walked toward her, circled her once with an appreciative glance, then took her hand and placed a small kiss on it. Simon has told me all about you, he said, his voice warm with charm. Lechsinska blushed. Really? I hope I am not a disappointment. Not at all, not at all, quite the opposite. A silence filled the room, as if someone had forgotten a line in a stage play and no one was quite sure what to do next. Can I fix you a drink? Jenny came to the rescue, as she often did, taking hold of Richard's arm and guiding him toward the drinks cabinet, her confidence smoothing the moment. Richard and Simon had been friends right through school until Richard's family suddenly moved abroad, the whispers of financial trouble and a mountain of debt trailing behind them. Lechsinska whispered into Simon's ear, "Are you sure they are going to get on?" "Don't worry, everything will be fine. You'll see, trust me," he said. Just then, the doorbell rang. Simon rushed off to answer it. Lechsinska was still feeling tense about the whole evening and was trying not to panic, her heart fluttering like a caged bird. She headed back to the kitchen, Jenny following her through the door. "I thought you knew Richard," Jenny said. "I never said I knew him." Lechsinska tried to look busy, adjusting pots on the stove. "You said you thought we would get on. How could you know that if you had never met him?" Jenny added. Lechsinska was on the spot. True, she had not said she knew him, but it was implied. "I thought you might not come." "I'm sorry," Lechsinska paused as Jenny laughed. "I think you may be right. We might just get on. But you owe me big time." Lechsinska sighed. It's going to be a nightmare, she thought. She knew what Jenny meant. She would have to go on one of her wild weekends, water skiing maybe, or bungee jumping. She had refused in the past, but now she was on the hook. She owed her, and Jenny was sure to collect. "Sinska, come and meet Solomon and Letitia," Simon called, using his pet name for her. Lechsinska was too long for everyday use, and he couldn't call her Lech, so Sinska it was. Lechsinska gathered herself together and stood upright, smoothing her dress. "Once more unto the breach, dear friends," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. "Sorry, darling." Simon closed one eye and offered his ear to the heavens, trying to catch her mumbled words. "Oh, nothing, I'm ready," she said. As Lechsinska entered the living room, she lifted her gaze and met the deep brown eyes of Letitia, whose presence seemed to fill the space with an electric intensity. "Well, Simon, you never told me she was so beautiful," Letitia said, running her hand down the side of Lechsinska's face, stopping just under her chin, her touch lingering like a whisper. "Yes, indeed beautiful," she repeated. "Put her down, Letitia. You'll have to forgive my sister. She likes beautiful things. I'm Solomon." "Oh, your brother and sister." Lechsinska was surprised, her voice betraying her assumption. "Yes, that's right, brother and sister. Why, what did you think? Oh, I see. Letitia, darling, she thought we were lovers. What do you think about that?" Letitia looked deep into Lechsinska's eyes. "Lovers," she said, a smile growing across her face, her gaze unwavering. Lechsinska felt uncomfortable, the weight of Letitia's attention pinning her in place. She didn't like being the center of attention. "Come on, I'll help you in the kitchen," Jenny said, coming to the rescue again. "My God, that was intense." Jenny laughed as they reached the kitchen, but Lechsinska's eyes filled with tears. "I can't do it. I just want to run away. Who are these people? I don't know them. It's too much. I feel like I'm sinking in quicksand, and the harder I try to escape, the quicker I sink." Lechsinska blew her nose on a tissue she had in her pocket. Jenny poured a glass of wine, the liquid glinting in the kitchen light. "Come on, drink this. Everything will be fine. Look, I'll sit next to you at the table. If it gets too much, you can hold my hand, okay?" Look at me, okay? Yes, okay, thanks, Jenny. Around the dining table, the air was filled with the noise of conversation, a lively hum of voices and clinking glasses. Simon and Solomon were talking business, their voices low and focused, paying very little attention to anything else. Jenny and Richard were competing, swapping stories of outrageous antics, each trying to trump the other, their laughter bright and bold. Lechsinska couldn't help it. She listened in. Richard was telling a story of a yachting race he took part in a few years back, his hands gesturing wildly. The waves were at least 30 feet high. You know, a good-sized swell, Richard explained, his eyes alight with the memory. Jenny laughed as she moved in closer, her elbows on the table, toying with the glass of wine she held in her hand, her fingers tracing its stem. So let me guess, the rest of the crew fell sick, the captain fell overboard, and you single-handedly sailed the ship to safety, rescuing the captain on the way. Actually, no, but that does sound like me. Jenny and Richard fell toward each other, laughing, their chemistry undeniable. Lechsinska felt more than a little embarrassed as their conversation drifted to a more intimate level, their voices lowering. She raised her eyes and looked across the table. Letitia was looking at her, a smile grew across her face, slow and deliberate. Lechsinska looked down at her plate, trying hard to think of something to say, her mind racing. She looked back at Letitia. Lechsinska knew what she wanted to say, but the words refused to pass her lips, dying in her mouth before seeing the light of day. "Don't worry, darling. You just sit there and look beautiful," Letitia said, her voice a velvet purr, her eyes burning into Lechsinska, searching every hidden part of her soul, as if taking all her secrets and fantasies and laying them bare across the table. Jenny's hand crept into Lechsinska's under the table. She looked at Jenny, who was still in deep conversation with Richard, but her touch was a quiet anchor. "Listen, everyone, Solomon has invited us all down to his holiday home next weekend in Cornwall," Simon announced, his voice brimming with excitement as he offered to refill everyone's glass. "Yes, we would love to have you," Letitia added. "What a great idea, Solomon." Her eyes were still firmly fixed on Lechsinska, unyielding. "What sort of place is it?" Richard turned toward Solomon, his interest sparked at the thought of adventure, his voice eager. Jenny sighed and leaned back in her chair. "Come on, Lechsinska, I will help you clear the table." Lechsinska and Jenny entered the kitchen with arms full of plates, the clatter of porcelain a brief distraction. "Thanks, Jenny." "That's all right. I have done a bit of washing up in my time. I don't mind." "No, I mean thanks. Thanks for everything, for always being there for me." Jenny put her hands on each side of Lechsinska's face, took a deep breath, then pushed Lechsinska's cheeks in until her lips puckered up, and kissed them, a playful gesture filled with affection. "You know I love you, right?" Jenny shouted as she went to collect the rest of the dishes. "Yes, I know," Lechsinska mumbled to herself, a smile tugging at her lips. In the dining room, they were talking about Solomon's invitation for the following weekend. The three men were like excited schoolboys, planning the whole weekend, where they would eat, what to visit, could they hire jet skis, and, of course, where the best pubs were, their voices rising with enthusiasm. Letitia approached Jenny, clutching a wine glass in one hand and a lit cigarette in the other, the smoke curling lazily upward. "Is everything all right?" Letitia asked, her tone smooth but probing. Jenny stopped tidying the table and stood upright. "Everything is fine, just fine. Why would it not be? She is such a sweet little thing. I think you embarrassed her." Letitia glanced toward the kitchen, her eyes narrowing slightly. "I embarrassed her?" Jenny took a breath and lowered her voice. "You have not taken your eyes off her all evening, and you are making her feel uncomfortable." "Would you rather I looked at you then?" A half smile crept up one side of Letitia's face, her voice teasing. "We could go a couple of rounds. Let's see who comes out on top." Jenny's words burned with fire, her fists clenching as she glared at Letitia, anticipating a quick response. "Although the prospect of rolling in the hay with you is tempting, I am going to save you for another day." Letitia blew a kiss at Jenny as she turned and rejoined the men who were deep in their own conversation, oblivious to the tension building between the women. Jenny burst into the kitchen. "My God, who the fuck does she think she is?" Lechsinska had never seen Jenny in a rage before, and it made her slightly nervous, her friend's usual spark replaced by a storm. Jenny threw the window wide open and sucked large gulps of the cool night air, her chest heaving. "What's wrong?" Lechsinska asked, rubbing Jenny's back, her touch gentle. "What happened, Jenny? Talk to me." "What happened?" she asked again. "Nothing, nothing. I just had a hot flush. Too much wine, probably." She kissed Lechsinska on the forehead. "Come on, let's finish the dishes." The girls stood at the sink, bumping their hips together as they sang their favorite songs, laughing and giggling, the tension easing. Lechsinska was feeling more relaxed now. The evening was almost over, everyone had enjoyed the food, and her best friend Jenny was with her, their harmony a comfort. Simon shouted through to the kitchen, "Lechsinska, Jenny, our guests are leaving. Come and say goodbye." They gathered at the front door. Simon and Solomon were shaking hands and slapping each other on the back, still talking about the upcoming weekend, their voices animated. Jenny and Richard embraced. Richard whispered in her ear, "See you next weekend," thoughts running through his head about what might be in store if he played his cards right. Unfortunately, his words fell on deaf ears. Jenny was glaring at Letitia across his shoulder as she was putting her hand under Lechsinska's chin and kissing her on the lips. "Goodbye, darling," she said. Letitia looked at Jenny. No words passed between them. They didn't have to. All was said with their eyes. There would have to be a reckoning between them. Jenny knew it and was ready to go those couple of rounds, but Letitia liked to play with her food before devouring it. "Jenny, can you hear me?" Richard grabbed her shoulders and pushed her back slightly so he could look into her eyes. "Sorry, Richard, I'm just a bit tired. What were you saying?" "I said I will see you next weekend. You will be there, won't you?" "Oh yes, I'll be there all right. I can't wait," Jenny said through gritted teeth. "You seem a little angry there, girl. Are you okay?" "Nothing I've done, I hope." "No, no, like I said, I'm just a little tired." Jenny kissed him on the cheek, then guided him toward the door. "See you next weekend." Richard stood in the corridor with a bemused look on his face, not quite understanding what was happening. "Until the weekend, then." The words had barely left his lips before Jenny shut the door, leaving him standing face to face with the door knocker. "Great," he thought as he turned to leave. "It must have been something I said." He walked down the road, muttering to himself, "Women. I will never understand them." Back at the flat, Lechsinska, Simon and Jenny were drinking coffee in the kitchen, the air warm with the scent of roasted beans. Lechsinska came straight out with it. "Do I have to go? Can't you go without me?" Lechsinska could not bear the thought of spending a whole weekend in Letitia's company. She made her feel uncomfortable, her attraction to the enigmatic woman both confusing and terrifying. Simon looked at her with a puzzled look on his face, but before he could respond, Jenny interrupted. "You have to go." Jenny knew if Lechsinska didn't go, she couldn't go, and she had unfinished business with Letitia. Simon folded Lechsinska into his arms. "Don't worry, Sinska. It will be fun, you'll see. Now say goodnight to Jenny. You promised me something, remember?" "I will see myself out. You go to bed. I'll see you at work on Monday." The girls kissed and hugged. Lechsinska watched through the window as Jenny left the building and made her way to a waiting taxi, its engine humming softly. She took a last look back before entering the taxi and waved. Lechsinska waved back and mouthed the words, "I love you," her breath fogging the glass, the weight of the weekend ahead settling heavily on her heart.